My name is Victor Fuhrman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. Throughout the ages, shamans have played the role of visionary within their communities. Is it possible for each of us to be open to visions and allow the messages we need to hear to come through? My guest this week on Destination Unlimited, visionary teacher Carol Day, shares hands-on tools and shamanic practices to become more visionary and connected to the world around. She explains how to prepare for shamanic visioning and details earth-whispering practices to expand the senses, set intentions, and connect deeply with intuition and spirit helpers. Carol Day is a visionary teacher, psychotherapist, artist, and director of the Centre for Creative Vision in Scotland. She runs a private practice in systemic story therapy and is involved in projects centered on creating community and connecting people back to the land. Carol lives in Glasgow, Scotland. Her website is creativeearthensemble.com, and she joins me this week to share her path and new book, Shamanic Dreaming, Connecting with Your Inner Visionary. Please welcome to Destination Unlimited, Carol Day. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you, Victor.
Carol, please share with our listeners your path and how it led to the work and wisdom you bring to our world.
Oh, wow. What a great question. Well, my path has been a path of really studying creativity and creative energy, really. And I guess comes from the central question of why we're here and how does it all work. So this took me into being an artist because I had a real sense that the only way to understand creative energy is to engage with it consciously. So my path as an artist and then as a writer and as a creator just really opened me up to being fascinated by how that creative energy worked in others. And then took me from my art training into working with children and really trying to, in the classrooms and then in the different environments, just be with the children and work out how to best facilitate their own creative flow and their own expression. And then from then, my grandmother died and I had the most incredible opening of realizing that for sure that there's not just this realm. And from that, I had quite a very deep initiatory process of basically losing all my powers overnight and then having to work out how to get back again. And this took me to study shamanism, actually. And it was from a book that I'd read about shamanic initiations. And I was able, luckily, to just have a map given to me for what was happening for me. And yeah, just over the years, just really worked out from going into a place of deep internal questioning and connecting to the many realms that had come through when my grandmother had died. Just really finding a way to bring Carol back. And alongside this, I carried on studying. I had my own children, and just as with anybody that goes through this kind of experience, just had a real longing to help suffering and understand how to help others heal as well. And the main piece in all of this really was my relationship with nature. And at times it was only the trees or the sense of being in the weather or the many, being out there in the hills and away from the busyness of what we have in cities and a lot of human life. It was in these places that I started to understand that nature, the very many members of nature have their medicine. And this took me into what I now call the Four Directions Theatre, which is a way of working which understands that, we're in a big communication system here on this earth, on this planet, with everything, everything's communicating basically, and the realms beyond this one as well. And just wanting to find models and ways of working that could bring everything into a space where it could be heard and opened up to by humans again. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. Now, you run a private practice in systemic story therapy. What is systemic story therapy, and how does it differ from other forms of psychotherapy?
Wonderful. Thank you for asking that question. Well, I have studied as a psychotherapist, as a counsellor as well. That's been part of my path, studying pluralistic counselling. So what I would say in terms of how it differs, that actually at the core of the systemic story practice is person-centered counselling. And I don't know, for some of the listeners that might not be aware or that like to hear about Carl Rogers, he really has the core conditions of just really holding presence, congruence, acceptance, and really trusting that the person in front of you, or whatever's brought to you, that everything's there, and it just needs that container of holding and unconditional positive regard, he calls it, to really draw out and allow a process of unfolding. So my work with stories just come through me, and I've been writing stories since I could first write, basically, and the way that the archetypes, I really feel the archetypes at play in us as humans and in the stories of life. So the systemic story therapy really holds the model of person-centered counselling, but holds the model of what I call the wholeness template, which in some traditions might be known as the medicine wheel. But really understands and brings in then the constellation model. So for those of the listeners that might know something about family constellation work, which has been brought through by many practitioners over the years, including Bert Hellinger, this model really holds a theatre stage where it enables, by using maps or by using bringing in representatives, bringing in people to step into the field of a story, and inquiry can start to happen. So it might be a little bit like as well dream work that some people do, where you get objects to represent the different parts of the dream and then listen to what the dream's trying to tell you. And in effect, we're living in a dream all the time as well. So you can start to get this idea that the systemic story therapy listens to the story that needs to unfold within an individual or within an organisation or that's on a piece of land, and then brings in a model that can listen to what I call the different realms of the story. So the wheel that I'm talking about here, the wholeness template that I bring in, that opens the space for the systemic story therapy. And I call in the north, the east, the south, the west, and the north as a place of the physical, of the author, and all the information that's held there. The east is the place of the lifeline and all the stories in the lifeline, the information that's there. And then the south is the ancestral, and this really is learned from the constellation work and the constellation practice that I've explored as well, and the ancestors and how their stories want to be lived through us, or those fates, or those loyalties, or those being drawn to certain storylines, how they continue to keep on happening through us unless we go back and listen to them. And then in the West, the mythical. So really these are the archetypal expressions and the ways that, the stories of the land might want to come through, or perhaps the different spiritual traditions and their their theatres of the different archetypes, gods, goddesses, deities there, how they're looking to be included as well. And within the West as well, I developed this system of working with what I call pillars of light, which I really get from the work that I did with Marshall Rosenberg's NVC work. Of, if you really listen to something deeply, again, following that person-centered counselling way, and then we cast out to this wheel, to this wholeness template, and just ask what can listen to this the most closely. So these pillars of light could be empathy, or they could be, which is actually one of the core conditions as well, or they could be understanding, or sometimes accountability. So you can get the sense that, within these four realms, there are the storylines that are resonant with whatever any individual or any situation is living, and a sense that we're a continuum of other stories. And by allowing those to come into the theatre and show themselves, and also by bringing in the resourcing from that as well. So I have a real belief that when we're really present with something, not only can the story show itself, but almost like the listening that was never had, or the holding that was never there, can get an opportunity to come through. So that basically is the systemic story therapy, which has, to answer your question, has so many. I'm so grateful for everything that I've learned from my own education with psychotherapy, but it also, it includes a matrix that's multidimensional as well, which very much comes from my own experience of innately opening up to the many worlds, but also the many, many models of shamanic and mythical practice that are there.
As I shared in our introduction, you're the director of the Centre for Creative Vision in Scotland. What is the mission of the centre, and what are its offerings?
So I originally worked with the idea of having a centre for creative vision in 2018, when which is actually which was from the work that I was being led to lead around the visionary, and really understanding from a dream that I had, and some guidance that came through there, that the visionaries are very much needed to look after and take care of the future life map. I since created another name for the practice that I hold. So the Centre for Creative Vision last year became Creative Earth Ensemble, because I felt that the sense of being a part of something and really working a circle and putting that message across was a truer vibration for the way that I work. So working as a visionary, working with a listening and an opening to vision and what's needed, and the wider calling that's in everything on earth at this time is the central premise to the practice that I hold. But also I call it developing models of inclusiveness and flow, and of a real, my remit, I guess, is to work with others to start to be able to include what's been missed out, and enable a listening and a synthesis with nature and the many realms, and to create models that listen to all the different voices. So the people that I tend to work with hold roles doing similar things as well in the work that they do.
For our listeners who are interested in the Centre for Creative Vision, how may they find it on the web?
They could Google the Centre for Creative Vision, and it would lead you to Creative Earth Ensemble, the website as it's called now, or they could Google directly creativeearthensemble.com.
Many of us have some understanding of what a shaman is and what shamanic practice is like. Please share with us your understanding and experience of shamanism.
I really have a dance with how I call myself and the practice, because language is so important, isn't it? So for me, honoring the fact that if I'd never found out about shamanism and shamanic initiations from the books that I read originally, then I wouldn't be able to cite myself within within a map that helps me to understand that opening up, that meeting an edge, and the communication coming from something that's beyond what we consensusly agree is reality. Without that, I wouldn't have found my way so quickly. But what I'm also keen to do is allow that word shaman, which I think comes from Eastern worlds. I like to work with the notion that way of being, that shamanic way of being is the way of the original artists, the bards. So living in Scotland, being English and living in Scotland on British land, there's very much the sense of the Celtic, the Druidic ancestry here as well. And that idea of almost the seer, or the one that can see beyond, and that idea of divination that comes from when we're really closely listening. And also, within all the different spiritual practices, that place of meditative holding a real presence and a stillness for the moment, the mindfulness practices. I'm really big on just allowing everybody to tap into this shamanism, this shamanic way of being, as is one of the titles, as an innate practice, as something that's just a natural way for each of us. And as I mentioned in the beginning, my work with children as well, and then having my own children, of really listening to where that they are and just watching them play. And when I worked with my friend Kathy Bark, and she set up the Secret Garden Outdoor Nursery, we worked on a curriculum there together with children in the woods, full time in the days, and just really observed there's a real understanding there that something was going on. And I have, in the sense that play was more of an understanding of working with the imaginary realms, with the visionary realms, with the mythical realms, and that in some way we grow out of it. But actually, when things happen to us in life and we go into these difficult spaces, or we feel these cut-offs, or we go through these rites of passage, actually we start to, even though it can be painful, we open up to that which is beyond, to grow more into our bigger, wider selves again. So that's quite a little circle that I've took you on there to try and explain what shamanism might be for me. But I hope it explains that I feel it's innate in everyone, and that it can have many names.
Many of our listeners have some level of sensitivity to subtle energy, and some have well-developed clairvoyance, clairaudience, and clairsentience. But is it possible for anyone who reads and embraces the teachings and practices you offer in shamanic dreaming to open to the visions and messages?
I believe so. Yeah, we're all in this great web together, aren't we, Victor? We're all And I mean, the wholeness template, as I call it, that is the inclusiveness, that we're part of a much wider web, and we're connected all the time. So I absolutely 100% believe that. I guess it's up to the individual to know whether they want to. So it's a free will thing as well. And then sometimes it's not about the wanting, is it? Things just happen, and we're surprised, and we're plunged into a different way of looking at things. So yeah, I do think it's possible for everybody to access what I write about.
Now, before we begin with that aspect of it, what are the material tools that we need to prepare for this adventure?
Oh, I love that you call it the adventure. So I'm a bit of an engineer in the way that I work, and I love to kind of just get diagrams of things and just work out what might be those tools that you bring in, what might be that equipment that we can carry to help ourselves to go on this adventure. But basically, I've developed this model that I call the visionary triangle. It's really simple. It's got presence in the center of it, and then it's got three points, which are nature, knowing, and trust. And what I've found over the years from working with people and just really trying to help people to get into that space of how to open up and start this adventure, which I call visionary questing in the first act of the book, Calling. I found that if people spend time in nature, they'll very much start to find their way back to knowing that they are a part of nature, and they'll find a way to start feeling nature and the different members of nature communicate. And it's like with anything, it's a muscle that needs exercising. The knowing, so one of the definitions of the word shaman that I came across in the beginning was she or he who knows. So that inner knowing, that get people to connect to where that knowing might be within the body, and just to cultivate a relationship with that. Some people might know it more as intuition, but it's that hunch. It's that aligned place where we just tune in. And then the trust is my favorite, and it's the bit that we can battle most with, because it's actually what happens at these places where we let go of so I map as well very much this journey, this adventure, with the idea of the ego and then the spiritual nature. And that what happens at these places of initiation or opening is that the ego is challenged to let go of those protective mechanisms, challenged to let go of those ideas. We'll come up and have these habitual ways of behaving when it doesn't want to change. So just being really kind to the ego and understand that it's there, letting it be there and have a place, but letting it know that actually there's some great trust that's going to have to come in here to open up to something that's bigger and wider than what the ego's ready for. And that trust is it's almost like an alchemical process in this whole adventure. And every time that happens with this place of opening, then like I said earlier, we become more and more who we truly are.
My guest this week is Carol Day. Her new book, Shamanic Dreaming, Connecting with Your Inner Visionary. Carol, please tell our listeners where they can get your book and find out more about you and your wonderful work.
Thank you, Victor. So the book can be purchased through the publisher is Finton Press, which is part of Inner Traditions and Bear & Co. And it's distributed by Simon & Schuster. And it's available in the US from the 7th of February, and then as paperback, and then also as ebook all around the world from then. And then on, I think it's the 1st of March, it comes out in the UK. And it's available in many bookshops as well, and through Amazon.
And your website?
And the website is Creative Earth Ensemble. So www.creativeearthensemble.com.
Wonderful. And we'll be back with more of Carol after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week is Carol Day. Her new book, Shamanic Dreaming, Connecting with Your Inner Visionary. So, Carol, in your book, you share a list of items that people will need to begin this journey. What are some of those items?
The items to get ready to work with what I call the Earth Whisperer tasks in the material amongst them are a notebook, pens and coloured pencils, sketchbook, maybe a camera, a voice recording device, some headphones for listening to music or drumming, and outdoor clothing. This is really important. Waterproofs, walking boots, hat, gloves, scarf, according to your seasons and where you live, a frame, drum and beater or a tambourine, a rattle maybe, and then a tree identification book as well always comes in handy.
Wonderful. Now, as you shared earlier, you begin Shamanic Dreaming with a chapter entitled Presence and the Three Pillars. Let's look at these separately. I had a wonderful teacher who shared that in many traditions, those who are called, receive a calling, answered, "I am here," indicating presence, but that it also meant, "I am ready." How do you define presence?
So I love that. So presence for me is that space where I decide that I'm just going to be aware that my mind's having many thoughts, my emotions are doing their thing. Perhaps my physical body is speaking to me in some way, and maybe my sense of everything is casting out there. And I just notice in that mindfulness way what's happening. And I come to that place, that center within myself of knowing that beyond this there's a state of being that's eternal and that's true. So it's all of that really for me in my definition of presence. And when I'm holding space for someone else, I always, or for a group, I always invest to come into that place because I miss things otherwise. So the presence, that place of presence, that present moment is where we can all meet as well. And it's the place of connection.
And when we think of any energy or spiritual work, intention plays a critical part. How may we set our intention so that the energy flows for the highest good and best outcome?
It's so true, isn't it? The intention. It's I think I call it the sat nav in some of the writing that I do. Yeah, it's tapping into that resource, that well inside ourselves of knowing, and just for me, it would be asking, what's right for me right now? What's the most important thing, and just spending some quiet times and tuning into that, perhaps doing some journaling to write things out. But it's a real place of inquiry, isn't it? Getting to the intention and what the intention might be. I feel intention has really been found in a place of alignment when I pause in my life and maybe go for a walk in the woods and just listen. What's right for me? What's calling for me right now? And when I can align with that, then quite often, well, always actually, it's in tune with a wider story of intention and alignment as well that's there in these times on this planet.
Intention and attention.
Yeah, paying attention to be able to divine intention, I guess. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, you talked a little bit about the three pillars. Please define them a little more for us.
So the three pillars are the visionary triangle with presence in the center, and then nature, knowing, and trust. And nature as I think one of the ways that we have come out of sync with feeling a part of the consciousness of everything is by not naturally being included in nature, not feeling that inclusion so much in nature. So what I do when I work with people and through the writing that I do is I really encourage everyone to find themselves in nature and to include themselves as humans in nature. I talk a lot about how humans have a special way of being as shapeshifters, as mergers, as an ability to have empathy for, and our place on this planet really is as being having this amazing capacity to care and be caretakers for the planet. And it's something around bringing ourselves back into nature and uncovering what our true nature is that is key to being able to hold that role as loving, caring, effective practitioners and beings. And then the trust part is the way that we go through a journey of opening, and quite often we don't know what's next at these junctions. We might have an inkling, but the ego has to really let go so that we can go into a much bigger and more wonderful way of being. So the trust is the letting go and the opening to what might be possible that goes beyond what our everyday minds will tell us. And then the knowing is the way of it's the innate way of being that we each have to have a sense of. It goes with the intention really, and the attention that you were saying there, Victor, doesn't it? That way of trusting that each of us has that knowing within us. When I'm working with people who are training as practitioners in the shamanic or the constellation work, then I always have the circle. Just, we don't give advice, we don't overlay our stories onto others, just really have a way of working together where we trust that everybody does know and they've got that within them. And then when that trust for that is there, it's amazing what people can uncover and get to.
Shamans are gifted with the ability to deeply connect with the energy of the earth. And in shamanic dreaming, you share with us earth whispering practices. What are some of those practices, and how may we embrace them?
So I called it earth whispering because it's really about sorry, my cat is joining in on this interview right now. And so you might hear a bit of Isis here. So the earth whisperer practice is that practice of deep listening and really being present, bringing in that visionary triangle, the three pillars there, to be alongside the story of our lives as we're in it, and the landscapes of our lives. So as part of the earth whisperer practices that are in Calling, Act 1 of Shamanic Dreaming, there are earth whisper practices such as listening to the trees, the nature spirits, that are the weather spirits, the fae, and then the animal archetypes as well. So I have these practices that are really from just making ourselves available to have a relationship with some of these members of what I call members of the earth community and beyond.
What is the creativity wheel?
So the creativity wheel came. I originally wrote a course called Wheel, which I made into a self-published a few years ago, and it was a practice of working with the seasons of the year and to uncover how the seasons and the elements manifest through us. And I started working a lot with Joseph Campbell's ideas of, some of you might have heard of the hero's journey. I really adore Joseph Campbell's understanding of mythology and the archetypes. He's a real inspirer for me. And then I started to realize that I needed to create my own wheel. And the wheel in the hero's journey is really going out on the journey. Then a guide shows up, and then it's a letting go of what we knew before, and then moving round to to the end of the journey, where there's basically that growth that happens as we come back to the tribe as someone who's learned from that adventure of coming out of ordinary reality and going into the other worlds and then coming back through again with medicine. So the creativity wheel I brought in when I was teaching shamanic trainings to help people to be able to have the tools on the journey of initiation. So it has the seasons, and it has just those, I think it's the winter at the top, and the letting go, and the going into the darkness. Then there's spring, and then there's everything opening up and blasting open in the summer, and then the completing the cycle at the end in the autumn. So I kind of defined the different things that can happen at these points. So in the winter, I bring in at the inbolt time the resourcing of the inspirers. So who inspires me on this journey? Some of my most testing times have been when I've been in that place of the unknown and not known what's going to be next. And for example, one of mine would be to watch films about the Dalai Lama and what the Dalai Lama has been through. And then there might be other inspirers like Peter and Eileen Caddy have been inspired to me, who set up Findon Foundation and followed their guidance and really had that came from that aligned place from Eileen's messages that she was receiving from Spirit.
So you have Isis the cat visiting with you right now. And when I've been blessed with animal companions in my life, I've experienced a profound connection with them, especially through eye contact and touch. How may our animal companions, as well as those who are wild, be guides to us on this journey?
Oh, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. Yeah, I'm engaging with that moment, Victor, there that you're talking about, looking into the eyes. I guess I'm still learning about the animals as they are. I've recently at the moment I'm working with another course that I'm doing that I call Bird Tribe. And there's a group of us who are connecting with the birds and who they are as archetypes, what medicine they bring through. And in the second half of Shamanic Dreaming Loop, in the second act of the book, I work with there's an animal guide for each of those times on the timeline that I bring in there. And so vulture is one, and hedgehog. And then the okra are another. And there's really, there's a quality that each animal has, isn't there? They really hold a note and a beautiful, energetic and contribution to the way they are in this web of life. And I think at certain times they can come through and just hold a space for us and remind us, give us messages, or just hold a quality that's really important. So I speak about Buffalo, who came through as the guide and since I've worked with Buffalo Woman and often kind of just merged with Buffalo Woman, she was the one that brought through the yellow hoop and brought through the guidance for the visionary work that is in Shamanic Dreaming. But there's also the sense of these archetypes that are animals, that are deities in the different spiritual traditions that we have. That behind the borders of this lived reality, they really hold a quality that we weave with as well. So as much as being in this realm, they also hold a place in the wider realms, just like the ancestors.
I've been talking to squirrels recently.
Tell me about it.
I love squirrels, and for some reason, there's just something about squirrels that I feel their energy, and when they come to beg for the nuts and acorn things that we give out, they get up on their hind legs, and I think of Oliver singing, "May I have some more, please, sir?"
Oh, oh, I love squirrels. Yeah, I love the squirrel in the Nordic story as well, Vidrasil, running from the base of the tree with the dragon or the serpent and up to the top where the hawk is, the eagle is, and that role that they have in helping us break down the ego and the evolving to the spiritual.
Absolutely. Growing up in the 60s and 70s, some called me a tree hugger. I've always loved trees, talked to trees, and felt tremendous healing in their presence. What may we learn from the trees?
Oh, honestly, I feel like trees, oh, yeah. I'm glad you were a tree hugger and still are, I imagine, in the 60s and 70s. That's lovely. Yeah, trees have medicine, don't they? Just like those animals that we were describing, we were talking about there as well. They each have a quality of holding. And I guess what we can learn from trees is just by spending time with them. So my my way of working is always to say that I haven't got the answers. Go and spend time with nature to get that connection, each of us for ourselves, to work out what each tree is for us. But I've written another book as well that's called Trees Are Our Letters, which is coming out in February. And in that, I have a journey with 10 different trees and help people to connect to them and write with the trees. But the tree is always the first place that I get people to go to set up. And that's part of shamanic dreaming as well, to find a tree on the land and just open up to it and build a relationship with it. But I would say that some of the points in my life where I've been most challenged or something's happened that's been too much for me to bear, it's been the trees that have held me. And they just have an amazing quality and an amazing strength that we don't realize until we get to these places. So if anyone's listening now and is having a tricky time, I'd go find a tree with a tree.
Absolutely.
And go where you're drawn to.
Absolutely. My guest is Carol Day. Her book, Shamanic Dreaming, Connecting with Your Inner Visionary. We'll be back with more after these words on the OMTimes radio network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hi, this is Bill Maher. I can find humor in almost anything, but one thing I never laugh about is cruelty to animals. If you don't get the joke either, write People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, 501 Front Street, Norfolk, Virginia, 23510.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week is Carol Day. Her new book, Shamanic Dreaming, Connecting with Your Inner Visionary. Carol, when we think of forests, as we were discussing trees in the last segment, we also think of the dominion of the Fae. How may the fairy folk guide us on our journey?
Oh, Fae. Yeah, so the fairy folk. I first started working with the idea of the fairy folk or the transmission realms of nature, I often call them as well, when I was working with story, and I was in particular studying fairy story and the notion of, where do fairy stories come from? Well, they come from the fairy, they come from the transmission realms of nature. So there's something around, this many realmed existence that I'm talking about, and really helping people, to giving them a guidebook to open up to more and see if it resonates with what they're already experiencing as well. I had to include the the fairy within this as well as a realm of communication that's there. Almost there's many different maps of it, but I understand it as being almost like a circle around the human, and then the nature, and then there's the ancestral that's a circle around it as well, and then the future one. So I see them all as realms that are weaving with us and communicating all the time. And again, my own way of working with the fairy or the transmission realms of nature is been to just open up and just ask, and then also to I give a list of some of the different members of the Fae that are there in the book as well, to start to look at what's already been recorded in lore and go on the adventure, discovery.
And who are some of the other spirit guides we may call upon?
Do you know, I don't know if you know Harry Potter, but
Of course.
The line that's in there, I think my daughter and I watched Harry Potter probably about 500 times. It's always a favourite. But there's a line, isn't there, from Dumbledore, that's help will always come to Hogwarts to those who need it. And I feel like that about the spirit guides or about the guides, that when we sit and we're present and we're with, we just ask, then something will show up, something will come into our consciousness, and it's just about being aware. So yeah, I would probably say that, you know, the spirit guides come from necessity, and at these edges of transformation, then it's quite often that they're ready to come through, and they can come in the place of trees that we're attracted to. There can be sacred sites. So I used to go on a pilgrimage every year down to Glastonbury Tor, and to the ley lines in the south of England as well. And quite often I'd connect with the spirit of a well, or, you know, Chalice Well is a big healing guide for me. So it can be found on the land where we are as well, or rivers, certain rivers. I remember when I went to India in 97 after my grandmother died, and I was on a bit of a search. It was the Ganges that accidentally just kept finding myself being drawn back to the Ganges, and then started to get in touch with some, you know, the deity of the river there. And then that took me to Dundee and to the River Tay there. So the spirit guides can come from what we're drawn to, I think, and each of us follows our own journey, or it can be an ancestor that comes through, or something that, you know, a guide. For me, Anubis has been a big one of my guides that came through from the practice of trance dancing, and then Anubis appeared, and then just had a massive period of learning from Anubis. So yeah, just necessity and openness, I think, and following the signs will lead us to these spirit guides.
In shamanic dreaming, you guide us through 3 pathways of time. In which direction do we explore these? And what is the ultimate destination in this sacred and symbolic loop?
Loop. So yeah, shamanic dreaming had, I thought it had one act, and then the others came through as well, with the ancestors and the future ones really needing to guide a process really of acknowledging that where we are in this time is a very powerful place for enabling healing and reconnection within the timeline, which I call the loop of the ancestors and the future ones. And I begin the loop section, the loop act, by connecting to the present ones first, because it's that grounding in the present again that's key. And then open up a way of connecting to the present through the animal guide, the plant spirit, and the element, which for the present is the earth element, hedgehog, and then rose. And I call it a healing project, just cleaning up, almost clean. I quite often call myself a spiritual plumber. I really love just listening to where things are blocked and just going there with that listening and with the agents recovery. So the Rose Guide is really a compassionate guide that brings deep listening and heart healing to places in the present times. And then I set people up on a bit of an adventure, traveling through time and journey to the past and to the ancestors with the help of Vulture, who's been a main guide of mine for years, and then Fern as one of the most ancient plants on this planet, and have people traveling on a carpet of fern right back to the original, to the very first fern, and there's some work there just listening to the first human ancestors as well, and finding out what did happen to disconnect us from nature, and bringing healing and listening to those places. And then we go on a journey with the future ones, with the orca and with the lotus as the plant there and water element. And there's myths that say that we change, we take it in turns to be human and then orca through different lifetimes. And the orca have always been very, very loved ones on this planet for me. And there's a journey there working with the future ones, and just, something about just getting the guidance from the future ones about how we made it through, and some kind of sense of deep hope as well by working with the future ones there.
How may we extend the clarity and healing that the practices you offer in shamanic dreaming to our sisters and brothers struggling with the events of recent history and our current world situation?
I think by Thich Nhat Hanh is one of my most loved teachers. He died last year. But I remember someone asking Thich Nhat Hanh that question about, how do you work with just the deeds that can happen in mankind, or these more difficult parts. And he used to say, I just always think that could be me. I hope that gives some kind of step to the answer to what you're asking there, Victor. But we're not disconnected, and that suffering and difficulty that's there is something where I'm not pushing that away, isn't it? And just bringing the casting out, bringing this wholeness template, bringing I feel like my life has taken me to some really agonizing places, but what I've come through with is a deep knowing that there's something that's holding us, that the universe is, I don't often use that expression, that the universe is holding us, but it is that, really, isn't it? There's something, there's always the listening, there's always the compassion, there's always the grace and the wonder that can come through. So I guess it's to just see those places and those stories that are so difficult, being able to have the benefit of that, and to hold in our own hearts the compassion and the love as well.
What would you like your readers to take away from shamanic dreaming, connecting with your inner visionary?
I think I'd like them to take away whatever it was that drew them to know that they needed to read the book, or I guess books have always spoken to me, almost leapt out of shelves, and I've known that I have to read it. So in a very unconditional way, then I'd like to think that would be what each person could get. But I guess in terms of a wider vision, then it would be to just feel ourselves as part of a big, wide, amazing circle of connection, love, hope, positivity, healing, growth, spiritual connection, and permission to be ourselves, and for everything on this planet and beyond to be able to come into a symphony together.
Her book is Shamanic Dreaming, Connecting with Your Inner Visionary. Carol Day, one more time, please share with our listeners where they can get your book and find out more about you and your amazing work.
Thank you, Victor. So my book, Shamanic Dreaming, is available through Findhorn Press Publishing, part of Inner Traditions and Bear & Co. And it can be purchased from the 7th of February in the States, and on ebook then as well, and also in the UK from the beginning of March as paperback, and Simon & Schuster distribute the book.
And your website?
It's www.creativeearthensemble.com.
Carol, this has been absolutely delightful. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your experience and your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me, Victor. It's been wonderful to meet you and feel your lovely energy as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor, the Voice Fuhrman. Have a wonderful week.